Okay, I think we'll get started. Good afternoon, Aggies. Hope you're all doing well. Hope that the semester is as great as it could be. You're enjoying the outdoors and this wonderful weather. And thanks for the 100 or so far that are back for yet another edition of COVID-19 at NMSU. So a couple things to say first, which is a big thank you for those who continue to practice COVID safe practices, especially wearing your masks in the classrooms and in our buildings. You know, the only time you could take your mask off is when you are taking a sip or taking a bite and actively eating. We have to keep that up. Our state is still one of those states that has masking, although we will be asking Kathy Hanley to talk about that and what's going on throughout the United States. We have big questions these days about the masking protocols. We also, as you might have seen in Hotline today, and for students who don't get Hotline, this is not as applicable to you, but for those who are employees, and that includes faculty, staff, and student employees, it's time now to upload your booster. And that was effective last week. You need to do it this week before midnight on Thursday night. Hotline explains it totally perfectly, better than anything that I can do in words. So please pay attention to that and upload your booster when you are eligible. And that's 5 weeks after the 5 months after you're fully vaccinated. As usual, Jon Webster will show the dashboard. I'll address a couple questions to Kathy. Amanda will talk a little bit about Aggie Health and Wellness, and our Dean of Students will answer a few questions when the time comes. And then we have a great panel to close out our session today, which is going to be led by Mathew Madrid, our president of ASNMSU. And they're going to be talking about engagement activities, activities for Black History Month, and tutoring assistance for students. The discussion, as I said, will be led by Mathew, and we will also have the Vice President for the Black Student Association, Hunter Stewart, and along with her, Campus Tutoring Office Representative, Stephanie Frisch. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Jon, please, if you could show our case count and our dashboard.
Sure, thank you, Ruth. Good afternoon, Aggies. Let's get going here with our dashboard trends. So our COVID-19 trends for this week, positivity comparisons, these are all as of the end of day yesterday, February 14th. New Mexico, it is 11.5% positivity rate. Doña Ana County is 17.2% for a 14-day positivity rate, and a seven-day positivity rate is 13.8%. It's very important to note that if our 7-day positivity rate is below the 14-day, it means we're trending in the proper direction. Our 7-day per 100,000 people is at 72.9 cases per 100,000. And our NMSU 7-day population positivity rate compared to Doña Ana County's numbers is at 4.88%. As a reminder, we must maintain below 13% because we make up about 13% of the county's population. So we're in very good standings as compared to where we should be with the county numbers. Positivity comparison breakout on that. NMSU and Doña Ana Community College both reside in Doña Ana County. So Doña Ana County reported 1,599 cases last week. We at NMSU reported 78 cases. So that's where our 4.88% makeup comes from. Our other community colleges, Carlsbad, Grants, and Alamogordo reported no cases last week. Job well done to you all. Great going. Our active cases are also continuing to decline. Active are those cases that are currently in isolation, and we still keep them as an active as they've been positive and waiting to come out of isolation per the CDC. So we have 19 active cases total system-wide at NMSU. Here on main campus, we have 6 students, 7 employees, and 4 of those 6 students are in isolation in campus housing. Doña Ana Community College has 5 students and 1 employee. And as mentioned before, the other branch campuses doing very well with no active cases right now. Trend lines for both the state and Doña Ana County. New Mexico showing a super decline. You can see over here to the far right, this is where we hit our peak with Omicron, and now we're all the way down just below where we were in November of 2020. Same with the county. It shows that steep decline in the right direction, all the way down to about where we were in November of 2020 as well. Trend lines for our students and our employees show the same. Our students have been on a steep decline for the last 4 weeks, as well as our employees for the last 3 weeks. So we're trending all in the right direction along with the state and the county. Level of community transmission, we showed this at the last town hall where every single state, all 50 states were red. We now have one state out of all 50, that's Maryland, who has dropped back to substantial. So that is good news to see at least one state moving in the proper direction. Hopefully we're all headed that way very, very soon. Something that's always forefront on everybody's mind of how we're doing here in the county is what is our hospital data. So this is the latest hospital data for Doña Ana County from the CDC. We have had about 45.6% decline in hospital admissions over the 7-day period last week. You can note that on the graph of that sharp decline of admissions. This is all for COVID admissions. Let me remind of that. We've also had a little over 4% of beds used, total beds have declined. We continue to maintain about under 20% of the total beds here in Doña Ana County for COVID patients are even used. And then our ICU beds remain flat. They're at a little over about 40.5% of the ICU beds are COVID patient related. So there are still no surge capacities enacted here in this county for hospitals, and the data still trends in the positive direction of no more cases in the hospitals. But with that, I will turn it back to Ruth for continued questions for the rest of the panel.
Great, thank you. Before we ask the ones that came in directly to the COVID-19, I'd like to ask Kathy to address a couple of different things. One is around boosters. There's now some information that's coming out that says we may need another booster. So that's certainly not something that we have been required to do. That's something that people are talking about. So Kathy, if you could opine on that, and then just what you're hearing about all these mask mandate changes and all over the United States, it seems.
Thanks, Ruth, and hi, everybody. In terms of boosters, let me just update everyone who might be interested that the animal trials for Omicron-specific boosters just started to wrap up, and the data came out yesterday. The good news, bad news is that the Omicron boosters don't work any better against Omicron than any other booster, any other vaccination. The good news part of that is that all the vaccines and boosters work somewhat well against Omicron. And the question becomes, because we know that the immunity stimulated by even boosting does begin to wane after 4 to 5 months, are we now in a situation of infinite boosting where every 3 months we put our arm out? And I don't think that's going to be the case. I think what we're going to see is that every year, as we do, or I hope we do, with the influenza vaccine, we will be boosted against SARS-CoV-2, and that will protect us against what will ultimately become a seasonal virus that is most likely going to be peaking in fall and into winter. So that's my prognostication for the future of boosts. I don't think that we're going to be in a situation where every 3 months we have to be boosted. And I suspect that the mandates for continual boosting will also alleviate once everybody's been through their 3-dose series. In terms of removing the mask mandates, I know that a lot of public health experts flinched very hard when that news came out. And just to use an analogy, when you're putting out a campfire, you don't just dump some water on it and walk away. You douse it, you stir it again to see if any of the ashes light up, you douse it again, and you make sure that there's no smoldering embers there that might light up another forest fire. We're in, I hope, that pattern now with SARS-CoV-2, where we're trying to make sure that the fire really is going out. And an important part of that insurance is continuing to wear masks until we're really sure that transmission is going to stay on that nice downward arc that John just showed you. Again, I suspect we're moving forward into a future where masks are used either at times of high risk or by people who are at high risk. And by that, I mean that there will be times when COVID rates come back up and we may be asked to put masks back on. We may be more amenable to using masks as a general tool against other respiratory viruses like influenza. There may be specific outbreaks that we address with masks. And there are people who will always be at very, very high risk of deaths from COVID-19 who may always choose to wear masks in public. So I see masks as being a much more integral tool of our public health than they have been in previous times.
Great, thank you, Kathy.
Sure.
Yeah, people are all over the campus talking about masks, and most of the people I've talked to are saying that even when the mask mandate is lifted, that they will probably still choose to wear masks in grocery stores, in high volume areas, and that people just really aren't ready yet to be without masks. I talked to my mother yesterday, she's 96, and she certainly was not here for the Spanish flu, but she is well aware of it as a medical doctor herself. And she said, it's unwise to stop take your mask off. Just because somebody's going to say it's an endemic doesn't mean that this is over yet. So keep your masks handy.
Right. And to clarify, just because the mask mandate is lifted does not mean you are mandated not to wear a mask, right? You are always allowed to wear a mask. And if you have concerns, keep doing that. That said, the mask mandate is not lifted yet in New Mexico. I want to be very clear about that. So you go to New Jersey, where Ruth and I are originally from, and the mask mandate is lifted. But in New Mexico, we still have a mask mandate.
And we will make sure to keep you informed if that changes at any time soon. So Amanda, be great to hear about how things are going with Aggie Health and Wellness, and particular testing and vaccines.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of no news is good news. I'm here to report that we're pretty much steady. We're continuing to test, give vaccines every afternoon. It's kind of business as usual for us. We're still doing face-to-face appointments, still continuing to do telehealth for both medical and counseling services. Still here, still contact tracing. Nothing really new other than the fact that J&J actually will no longer is being shipped. So if you are interested in receiving a J&J, I encourage you to call around and identify that specific dose for yourself, because they're not shipping it anymore. Also, we encourage anyone with questions with boosters and or certain types of vaccines such as AstraZeneca to please call our pharmacy. They are very well knowledgeable about when to boost, when not to boost, can I get one? So definitely call our pharmacy and they will help you out.
Thanks, Amanda. Okay, I'm going to get into the questions, and Anne, if you want to answer or address anything else when I ask you, feel free. Okay. So the first question, this is to Kathy. Is it possible for a household member to test positive that is fully vaccinated, and for other household members also fully vaccinated and boosted to test negative? If so, how? Since Omicron is much more easily spread.
I feel like this happened. And yes, it is, of course, possible. One possibility is that the household members all became infected earlier, but were asymptomatic. The person who tested positive was actually the last person in the train, but perhaps became symptomatic and therefore went for testing. Another possibility is that the person who became symptomatic or who tested positive had been boosted a longer time ago than their household members, because we know that recency of boost is important in thinking about protection. So the more recently you were boosted, the more protected you are from infection. And then finally, there is always the element of luck. And perhaps the positive person simply wasn't breathing as directly on people as they thought they were. But my suspicion is that one of the other two explanations it will account for that pattern.
Thank you, Kathy. Next one's for Anne. How is NMSU checking and enforcing that students who are testing weekly are actually doing so and submitting the approved methods and not the at-home antigen tests?
Sure. Well, thank you, Ruth, and howdy, everybody. My team has been up to our elbows in test results and documenting vaccination documents. Let me just kind of share a little bit about what happens. Obviously, our students are required, if they're choosing to test, they're supposed to be submitting a PCR test. And just to be clear, those tests that came in the mail recently that were distributed by the federal government, those are PCR tests, and those will be accepted. Other tests that you might be able to pick up from local vendors and are available in stores that are the antigen tests, those aren't ones that we accept. And there's a clear difference, and our staff knows the difference. And when we get information submitted to us, we can tell. The documentation of the PCR tests are required to be submitted weekly by those students who have opted to test, or individuals who have opted to test. The information that we see and we want to see is a name, a written name, and the date of the test, and then the result. And those reports that we take from either VaxTrax or the Crimson Connection link, we run those reports every Friday morning. And we analyze those for compliance for every student that we have documented in our database that's testing regularly. And the students who are not in compliance, when we find one during that reporting period, then we forward those on to our student conduct staff, and then they move forward with the conduct process. Essentially not complying with an NMSU policy is what people are basically going to get a reminder about. Obviously, if it continues, then the penalties for not complying will increase. And so hopefully we get people back on the right path. I will say that our staff are very interested in making sure that things are right. And so if there's a mistake or if there's a technology error, we have been very flexible, and we've been working with students to find out where the issue is and see if we can resolve those.
Great, thank you, Ann.
Mhm.
You might want to take the next one, or John can. It's about residence halls. And that is NMSU considering requiring students that live in the dorms to be vaccinated in order to live in the dorms next fall?
John, you want to take this one?
I can take that one. So
Sure.
Vaccination or testing protocols adopted by NMSU for students, faculty, and staff, they all apply to the residents in the residence hall. NMSU Housing will continue to provide the guidance on current practices, and will continue to encourage all of those residence hall students to be vaccinated.
That said, we are looking at vaccinations as a policy at NMSU. And we may be back later with information about that in another month or two, as it relates to all kinds of vaccinations, not just COVID related. Okay, let's see, Ann, this is for you. If I have a student who wears a mask, but continuously lowers it so that it's below the nose, as we've all seen, so the nose is showing, at what point do I report them to you, the Dean of Students, because they aren't following the policy? I correct them each day in class and have already spoken to them privately. Ann?
Sure. Faculty and staff and students can always refer a situation involving student behavior to our office, and our team will review the situation, and we can handle it according to our community standards and code of conduct. So that it's not just a masking behavior. In this particular case, sure, refer it to us and we can have further conversation. And if there's concerns for repeated violations, then we can handle that as appropriate. But if you've already had that conversation privately, it's still a concern, I'd just go ahead and recommend you give us a call, and maybe we can walk through the scenario and handle it on a case-by-case or a unique situation basis with that individual. More often than not, the conversations that we have generally end up in a positive and a productive outcome, so that everybody feels like they've been heard and is comfortable moving forward.
Great, thanks, you, Ann. And for those of you who are in and around the campus, you'll see that there's new mask signage that says specifically to put it over your nose and your mouth. It's a new graphic, which leads into the next question, which is about masking. John, can someone put up signs on the outside parameters or inside of all buildings reminding about the mask policy? Many have been removed.
Yes, we'll send a reminder to find, so the building monitors know where to find them for printing, and we'll send a note to remind them they can replace those all throughout the year and should be doing so and get them up on all the doors, entrances, and other pertinent places throughout the building.
Also on the Now site, there's a resource section that has all of the signage, and you could actually go and print them yourself and go ahead and affix them. You don't need to ask for permission to affix signs as it relates to masking. It's very important that we make constant reminders, and yes, people do tear them down at times, or they get ripped just because of normal wear and tear. All right, John, who should a supervisor contact for inquiries of non-compliance to ARP 16.32? That's the policy about COVID, or when receiving a non-compliance memo.
For inquiries directly related to the non-compliance memo, if you receive one, supervisor should be emailing, that's all lowercase, hrs@nmsu.edu as indicated at the bottom of those memos. But as always, you can email us at covid19@nmsu.edu and we can get that triage to the appropriate party to get you an answer.
Just so everyone knows, we continue to send, well, HR continues to send notices to supervisors of the non-compliant people. And the numbers are almost, I mean, we're like almost 99% compliant, but still there's that 1%. And there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into working with those people to make sure that they get compliant. Many of whom are not on campus at all, which is one of the concerns that people have about having to follow the rules when they're not physically here. But we're working through that. And John, since weekly testing or proof of vaccination, what does the data show for positive rates of unvaccinated versus positive rates of vaccinated? And Kathy may wish to address that too. John?
You're muted, John.
Of course I was muted, that guy today. So from October through December, our, testing or vaccination portion of this began in early October. So from October through December, 5% of our unvaccinated population at NMSU tested positive, and 1% of the NMSU vaccinated population tested positive. A reminder, this is a population positivity rate of the vaccinated and unvaccinated here at NMSU, and not a test positivity rate. We at NMSU, we don't have the way to calculate a test positivity rate, since vaccinated individuals are not required to submit a negative test every time they get a negative test.
We also can't really understand, because we don't require everyone to do their testing on campus. You can get the testing done any place that you want to get it done. Kathy?
Yeah, and I'll just chime in that that's testing positive, and we already know that Omicron infects quite a high proportion of vaccinated people. And the concern really now has shifted to disease and hospitalization, and we don't have that data at all. And so I think the relevant question can be answered by looking at people who are hospitalized locally with COVID, of whom the vast majority are unvaccinated.
Thank you. And a last one for the two of you. This is long. What is the rationale behind mandating boosters for a population that is, 1, not at statistically high risk of serious disease, 2, has likely already been infected and has natural immunity, or has had 2 shots, or including booster? And does this mean, in light of the recent CDC study, that people were required to get a booster every 4 to 5 months? Kathy answered that part. Is there any plan to recognize natural immunity, as the CDC finally has, or will there be continuous booster requirements? What is the rationale for continuing the vaccination mandates at NMSU, since the Biden mandate was stopped on January 21st, 2022, and this is solely an NMSU policy? I think John will talk about that part first.
Yeah, so that we can talk about that part first. So NMSU, we follow directives and guidance from the New Mexico Department of Higher Education and directives and guidance from the state and New Mexico Department of Health vaccination mandates and public health orders for state employees. Kathy?
Sure. So the rationale for continuing with vaccination mandates and boosting is that they're working. and rates of COVID are coming down. And we have never exceeded the capacity of our hospitals. And I'll remind everybody that one of our triggers for rolling the entire operation of NMSU back to virtual work would be to lose entire capacity in the hospital and not feel assured that our population had a safe place to go if they became really ill. So I don't, as I mentioned, I don't foresee a future where we're vaccinated every 3 to 4 months. I do foresee a future where COVID-19, like influenza, becomes a seasonal disease, and we address that by a seasonally appropriate vaccination and boosting. And I don't think I would characterize our entire NMSU population at one that is not at high risk for COVID-19. We certainly have members of this population who are in the various categories of risk and vulnerability to COVID-19. And I think we should be respectful of those individuals and try to safeguard them as well as we can.
Good. Thank you, Kathy. And what looks to be our last question for today to Jon, it looks like we are no longer able to schedule COVID-19 testing appointments through the curative site beyond this Saturday. Is that a glitch? Are they no longer testing at NMSU and DACC? Are they no longer taking appointments?
So I really appreciate that question. So we can highlight the fact that we do still have curative here. I made contact with them to make sure what's going on. So as far as a glitch in the system, just so we can explain how that works for them, is they have to create these open slots every week. So it's highly possible that someone logged on while they were actively opening them. It's highly possible that the browser you're using isn't showing it properly. But what I did get is, number one, yes, they're still here on main campus in Pinion Hall parking lot, and they're still at the Doña Ana Community College East Mesa campus. But if you're having issues, drive up in your car. They'll assist you right there on the spot to register and get your test done right then.
Great, thank you. Jon, did any questions come in while we were talking?
We did have one extra question while we're talking, and I'll try to read this. So, and Ann, this is going to be you and I probably together. So will HR be receiving notification of student employees who had problems uploading through the VaxTracks, and then they sent their documentation to the Crimson Connection? Right now, they didn't get their information into the VaxTracks, but maybe submitted proof of vaccination to Crimson Connection. So therefore, supervisors are receiving non-compliance notice of student employees. I can start that and you can add what you want to. And yeah, we're very well aware that may be a disconnect, and we are working through that each week. HR is working directly with Ann's team who's doing that to make sure we double check those student employees are not in the Crimson Connection. And if you have more to add on that one.
No, I think we're in contact regularly. Anytime we get information from a supervisor, we'll go back and verify both sets of records. And so we're trying to do our due diligence to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks and that it's not a technology error. That's why I said we really want to get this right. We want to be flexible and make sure that people who are doing the right thing or trying to do the right thing don't get penalized for that. So we're definitely working through that.
Thank you, Anna and Jon and Kathy and Amanda. This is a really big group effort. I think those of you who've tuned in to Zoom after Zoom after Zoom, we've got about 220 here today, probably realize the heavy lift this is. I've talked to several different departments who've said, yeah, my number one priority is COVID. Well, who would have known 2.5 years later, going into year 3, that COVID is still taking so much amount of time of so many different people. And, you know, that unfortunately means that other things can't get done. So I want to say a special thank you to those who are here on the Zoom, but also the many, many, many who are not on the Zoom, who may or may not be listening in, who are just doing an amazing heroic work, you know, to keep our campus safe. And we really have done pretty well. And things are looking up, at least for now, like they have off and on and off and on. There's nothing guaranteed here. So with that, I'm going to thank you to the COVID panelists, and I'm going to introduce Mathew Madrid to come on, and Hunter Stewart and Stephanie Frisch, who will talk to us about the student experience and student engagement and Black History Month and all kinds of interesting things as it relates to our students, to educate who's ever on the Zoom call with us. Thank you. Mathew.
Thank you, Ruth, and good afternoon, Aggies. I'm very thankful to be here today on this webinar, and I appreciate Jon for inviting me on to speak a little bit about student engagement and, more importantly, the student services that are offered on campus as we continue to adopt and advance to this kind of weird hybrid, somewhat returning to campus life, kind of staying on Zoom type thing. I'm here to mainly talk about the importance of engaging students back into campus life outside of the classroom. Obviously, as we know, there's issues with enrollment and the declining interest for students to stay enrolled in college throughout the US. One of the drivers for retention is student engagement, and that goes for joining clubs and organizations, joining fraternity and sorority life, which I hope to speak about at some point in one of these later webinars. But there's a number of different factors that kind of add into the outside of classroom experience. So I brought two students with me today who all have introduced themselves here shortly to speak about kind of those two aspects, right? One, the student services side of things and the student engagement side. So first I'll have Hunter Stewart introduce herself, and she will talk to everybody about the wonderful events that the Black Student Association is hosting with Black programs for Black History Month. Some of those have already passed, but there are still some opportunities for you all to get involved through the rest of the month. So I'll turn it over to Hunter.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Matthew said, my name is Hunter Stewart. I am the Vice President for Black Student Association. And we did actually just have some events recently pass. One of those being our Power Through Pedagogy panel. That was a panel of educators, and we had a Black History documentary series. And we also had an Elders podcast. So our upcoming events that we have coming this week, we have a Black Health Matters Fair this Thursday. It will be on Zoom. It starts at 12 p.m. So for those of you that want to join for that, I believe you can RSVP on Crimson Connection, and we can also send out the links to you students that do want to do that. And then on the 24th, we have an African drum and dance experience. That's going to be in Renfro Hall, but also on Zoom for those who can't come. And it is a certain capacity. So I believe they're only accepting 20 people for that. And that starts at 6 and it's about 2 hours. So we hope to get you dancing and having fun. And I'll also be a co-dance instructor for that. So I hope to see all of you that want to join for that. And we also have our last event is our 70s disco party at the Spot Family Entertainment Center. That's going to be a skating night. So that's actually going to be on the 25th of this month, and it's going to start at 5:30. And we are doing a certain amount of students. So the first 50 that do register on Crimson Connection will actually get free admission. So we highly encourage you guys, please, please, please register. We do want to support our students. So yeah, we're just doing a lot of fun, exciting things, and we just really hope that all of you students can join us. That's pretty much all I have for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hunter. So for context, the BSA did have another skate night at the Spot, I believe a couple of weeks ago. I was unable to attend, but I saw a lot of students partaking in the roller skating, and it looked like a lot of fun. So I highly recommend you consider it. But with that, I will have Stephanie Frisch introduce herself. She is the student representative from the Campus Tutoring Office, and she'll be speaking a little bit about the services that they offer to students and kind of the trends that you might be seeing in that office as students kind of return to their routines in terms of academic and learning and things like that. So Stephanie, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Matthew. So my name is Stephanie Frisch. I'm currently a graduate assistant for the new Cinda Center for Financial Capability, which is under Student Success. And I did my undergraduate degree here at NMSU as well. And during that time, I was a tutor in campus tutoring for 2 years. So I'm going to give an overview of like what campus tutoring does, and then kind of talk about, like Matthew said, some of the trends that we've noticed. So campus tutoring is exactly what it sounds like, tutoring for all undergraduate students. It is free to all students. It's part of student fees. So you kind of pay for it through your tuition and fees. So it's definitely awesome to take advantage of it because you're already paying for it, but you don't have to pay once you come into the center. We don't charge anything. And all of the tutors here are undergraduate students as well who have taken those courses that they're tutoring previously. So it's really nice to have like peers tutoring you. It's kind of like Aggies servicing Aggies. We are located in Corbett on the second floor in room 206, right next to the Dean of Students office. And we're open Monday through Friday and on Sundays. So we have 49 hours per week that we're operating. So really Saturdays are the only days that we are closed, and there's a lot of opportunities to get tutored online or in person. We also offer tutoring to NMSUO students, so we can reach kind of a broad area. We offer over 200 courses, but most of our focus is in those drop, fail, or withdraw courses. So that's kind of like where our focus is, but we do offer over 200 courses. So we offer everything from like chemistry, physics, most math classes, to like astronomy and geography, and some of the classes that are a little bit more niche to some students. Also, like I said before, all of our tutors are peers. So they're all junior or senior level students who have taken the courses that they tutor and received an A in them. And all the tutors are CRLA certified, which is College Reading and Learning Association. So every tutor is either level 1 or level 2 certified, and they get that certification through trainings and hours of in-person tutoring that they complete. And then I kind of have like a little breakdown of what a tutoring session would look like. So you can come into our office, or you can jump on our Zoom. We have like a virtual front desk, and you will get paired with a tutor, or you can schedule an appointment. And then you are guaranteed 1 hour of one-on-one tutoring. So we offer individual tutoring, and then occasionally we'll have group tutoring where we offer exam review sessions. Those are both online and in person. So you can join via Zoom, or you can come in person and get tutored. And most of the things that we offer exam reviews are for those drop, fail, withdraw courses, the chemistry, the physics, the math, the courses that we really have a lot of students coming to us and asking for help. And then we also work with other departments. So we have a couple collaborations. We work with the Writing Center, where we have in-person writing consultants who are based out of campus tutoring, but do cross-training with the Writing Center. We also have chemistry and biology tutors who were biocats or SI chemistry instructors. And then with the nursing department, we also are provided 13 tutors who are embedded in level 1 through 4 courses and provide HESI exam prep. So those students sit in those nursing courses. They're embedded in the course as kind of like TAs, and then they also provide tutoring outside. And we also work with NMSU Athletics to provide support with like the non-traditional hours the student athletes have, practice, travel schedules. We're really accommodating working with athletics so that we can make sure to accommodate for those hours. And then in terms of the outcomes that we've kind of seen with the pandemic, we got a report from the Office of Institutional Analysis that reported that there is an 89.1% pass rate for spring of 2021 and a 90.4% pass rate for spring of 2020. So those are basically like the percent of students who came in and got tutored, that's their pass rate, which is a pretty good pass rate, and it has been improving over the past couple of years. We've also seen an increase in students this semester and last semester as well. I think with campus kind of moving back to more in-person stuff, we have a lot of students who say they kind of forgot how to take exams in person. They're so used to just jumping on Zoom that they forgot how to study for a real like in-person exam, which I can definitely relate to. So we've definitely seen an increase in students who are kind of needing help acclimating back to in-person classes. And that's pretty much all I have. If anyone has any questions or is looking to get tutoring help, you can go to our website, which is campustutoring.nmsu.edu. You can join our Zoom from there. You can submit a tutoring request, or you can get more information, our hours, our phone number, all of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I know that all the peer tutors at the Campus Tutoring Center are doing fantastic work. I often walk by and I see a number of students in there, and it looks like they're having a good time, or at least as much as they can, studying for exams and things. But I know that service is really appreciated by students that I speak to, as are a number of other things. But Stephanie mentioned certification exams like the HESI and others, right? And one of the services that ASNMSU has recently rolled out, or is in the process of rolling out, is our professional development fund. It is an option that ASNMSU provides to all students of any levels in order to get reimbursed for certification exams like the HESI and others. There's a big long list of, I believe, over 30 different certifications and exams that we accept on our website, asnmsu.nmsu.edu, that we reimburse for. Like I said, that's something that we just started this semester. So if you know students who are going to be partaking in those types of things, those exams and certifications, please send them our way. We definitely want to help as many students as possible. And a lot of the times, of course, the financial piece of that is something that often is intimidating to students, and depending on which exam or certification they're taking, the cost can vary greatly. But aside from that, one thing that I kind of wanted to pose to my fellow students on the panel is, what's one thing that you both have kind of heard from your fellow students, your peers, about coming back to campus? What have they enjoyed most so far? And also, what's maybe been the #1 challenge that they've encountered? I don't know who would like to start. Hunter, I guess we'll go with you.
Okay. I would have to say, probably getting used to in-person classes again, because a lot of students are still online. I myself have a few online classes, and the only in-person class I have is my sign language class. So I do hear a lot of students say it is harder just to like sit in a class, and it's hard because of those COVID practices. So yeah, that's one thing that I hear a lot.
I can go ahead and go next. So I think mine's really similar. Working in the tutoring center, the positive and the negative are kind of the same. There are a lot of students who really prefer in-person classes. I know for me personally, math is really hard, and so having it in person can be really helpful. It kind of just allows me to like see things better, to ask questions in real time. I can pay attention a lot easier, because on Zoom it's like really easy to get distracted and not pay attention. And so we've kind of heard that from a lot of students, that they're happy to be back. They're happy to be taking in-person classes. It's kind of motivating them more. But on the flip side, we hear the same complaint, is that it's kind of hard to adjust. It's definitely it's kind of like you're relearning how to do school all over again. And there's kind of a learning curve to coming back to school. Even though most people have been in school, it's just different to come back after being online for so long. So we kind of hear positive and negatives about both.
And I have to echo all the same sentiments. There's a lot of mixed feelings in the air, and something that we often try to do at ASNMSU is just help them navigate, right? And we've heard a lot about triaging things, across campus, and when we hear student concern, of which we get many, we try to point them in the right direction, the right office that is able to kind of address those things. And, you know, there's a variety of different complaints and concerns, and positives as well that we hear. Most recently, in preparation for this, I spoke to some of the leaders from a few of the different organizations on campus, namely Aggies Without Limits, the American Marketing Association, and a few others. And for students who lead organizations and groups and clubs on campus, the number one challenge that they've been seeing and that they've been trying to combat is making more students aware that they continuously and constantly meeting, that they have been meeting over the pandemic, that they are offering hybrid options as we return to campus. Fraternity and sorority life, and maybe Stephanie can also speak to this, has, I think, been a little bit more fortunate, and they've seen a renewed interest from the student body to engage and participate in those programs. But other smaller organizations, they've been still seeing the challenge of getting their numbers increased and reaching out to students. And those organizations are much more niche in what they attend to and the interests that they kind of accommodate, right? There's clubs all the way from accounting to engineering and psychology clubs, things like that. And each of those groups plays a vital role on campus in making sure that students find some group that shares some part of their identity and interest with them. And as we move forward, for all the faculty and staff that I know are tuning in today, I encourage you to send your students that are maybe interested in meeting others or seem that they need some kind of extra engagement with their coursework directly or indirectly, forward them to Crimson Connection. And, you know, that's something that we should all be familiar with at this point. But for the student side of things, the rollout is still very much ongoing. And as students come in, you know, those who will eventually become freshmen, they'll be introduced to the platform right away through orientation and things like that. But for the older students who are now juniors and still had much of their college experience via Zoom over the pandemic, they may not be as familiar with Crimson Connection, and they may need that extra push to get onto the platform to identify those opportunities for themselves and just see what's going on campus. I know that a number of organizations are posting their meetings in the events page, and the kinds of giveaways that they're offering. And all of those are incredibly important for their own success and, of course, for students to recognize those opportunities on campus. So I guess the message that I want to hammer home today, as I know we're kind of getting to the end of this webinar, is if you hear students who need some kind of extra opportunity on campus and they don't quite know where to go, I always say the diversity programs, who are always really welcoming on campus, they do a fantastic job of meeting those needs as well. But if you are familiar with some organizations that have been around for a number of years, have those students inquire with the appropriate department or student leader that may be connected to those smaller organizations. I know that the Office of Student Involvement and Leadership Programs, along with ASNMSU, is constantly trying to aid those groups in getting that kind of outreach. But of course, it's a campus effort, as everything is, right? And if we can rely on all the faculty and staff to also do their part in reviving those groups and getting them the attention that they deserve, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you still don't know where to go, you can always send them to the Office of Student Involvement and Leadership Programs, SILP. or ASNMSU, and we can help those students out with that. But that's really all I had for this webinar. I wanted to keep our remarks relatively short. Again, I thank Jon for inviting me on and Ruth for entertaining this idea of mine to bring a spotlight back to student engagement. And over the next few weeks, we hope to spotlight other areas of campus, of student engagement, to be able to educate all of you and hopefully do our part in bringing back the spark, the life to campus as we continue to transition on into the new normal, whatever that means. But with that, I will happily pass it back to Ruth.
Thank you so much, Matthew and Stephanie and Hunter. You're why we're here. Every one of us chose our careers in higher education for students, and it's really great to hear your commitment to students as well, your sensitivity, your kindness, your engagement. So thank you for doing that. The Chancellor wasn't able to be here today. He wanted me to pass on his thanks also. Living here like we are right now takes all of us, and your goodwill, your engagement, and talking to us about all the opportunities. My goodness, I love to roller skate. That sounds like a lot of fun. A byproduct of COVID, being able to do online tutoring, online counseling. There are some good things that have come out of this as well. And probably I wouldn't have met you all had we not had Zoom. So I want to thank you again and thank all the Aggies who are here. Be bold, be kind, be safe. Go Aggies. Thanks very much. Bye.